This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
This episode of Cooking with Grief is brought to you by ham. It's like gammon, but thinner. We'll talk more about ham later in the show. Hello and welcome to episode 43 of Cooking with Grief, recorded from our respective quarantine bunkers. I'm Chris, the irresistible lad, and I'm joined as ever by my co-host, the human piriformis, Chris.
Hi there. You seem to have pork-based products on your mind today. Is there a reason?
Today, always.
Just a big fan of pork.
You show me a meal that cannot be improved by the addition of a pork product, and I will add a pork product to it.
Fair enough. Can't really argue with that. Nor would I want to. How can I be asked?
Doctors and religious folk the world over might, but, you know, you're a good friend like that.
But not me. I'm neither of those, so...
How are you doing? How are you enjoying self-isolation? I nearly said self-immolation then. I thought that's not right.
Oh no, that doesn't sound enjoyable at all. Fine, I guess. All the days merge into one, but, you know, could be worse. My main issue is just the fact that I just really need a haircut. My hair and beard combo basically makes me look like a lesser interesting, like, later Roman emperor. Post Hadrian, when they started growing beards and having, like, curly hair and stuff, like, yeah, it's basically my look now. One of the ones you wouldn't remember. One of the ones who probably got stabbed by the Praetorian Guard after, like, 2 months or something. Like, one of those.
You're the only person I know who, in response to the answer, how are you doing, would end up being stabbed by the Praetorian Guards.
It's been a roller coaster.
and that's why we're friends.
How are you?
Broadly fine. I have a beard, but I had a beard when this all started, so that doesn't really change much.
Unchanged?
Yeah, not particularly Roman in any sense, just hirsute, like a feral man unleashed upon a moor.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm alright. I mean, I work in food retail, so I'm so stressed that sunlight burns, but other than that, broadly fine.
You're a key worker and you're saving the nation, one pork product sold at a time.
Yeah, if pork pies are your salvation, then I am the man to speak to. Here's how the podcast works. Each of us two Chris's take turns trying to tantalise you with topics that have tickled our respective interests. We fumble at history, we grope at art, and we scramble for science, all while sucking upon the teat of comedy. We basically tell each other about stuff we've learned, basically. So, with that, Chris, what is your first topic?
Okay, so, whilst this isn't a sports podcast, I thought we could fill the void somewhat left by the Olympics being postponed for a year by talking about some crazy old-timey Olympic tales.
How old-timey? Like original Greeks? Or
no, less
modern but old?
Yeah, old modern Olympics. Well, my first story, I mean, it is quite old, but it's not that old, I suppose. 1936 Olympics, which were famously held in Berlin.
Yeah, I was about to say, good year. It was not a good year for anyone.
No. I mean, Jesse Owens got to show how, he obviously was black and then he won the race and sort of showed up the whole Aryan thing, only to then have to go through the back door when he went back to America to go meet the president.
I think he ended up selling his medals and racing horses, running against horses.
Yeah, it's not good, is it? It's always remembered the whole Hitler thing and always sort of glosses over the whole America was still really fucking racist back then thing. But this is not his tale. This is the tale of Ue Sueo. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it. He's Japanese. And he was a pole vaulter back in the day. He was representing Japan along with his teammate Nishida Shuhei. What happened was they actually had the exact same height. Not that they were the same height, but they cleared the exact same height. And so they couldn't decide who to give silver medal to and who to give the bronze medal to, because they were both beaten by someone else. So they basically just arbitrarily decided that Nishida would be given silver and Oe would be given the bronze. And obviously that's pretty arbitrary. So what they did was they took their medals home, cut them in half, had them welded together, and they gave themselves a half bronze, half silver medal each, which I thought was quite
So
fair.
that's either Sons or Brilver.
Yes, exactly.
Depending on which word you prefer more.
I prefer Brover.
Okay, I'll go with sons then. And then we'll have
We'll cut those
we can't
in
decide
half.
between them. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, we'll end
To
up
make bronze or
silver.
silver. Okay, I prefer bronze.
Yeah, they called them friendship medals. Quite a heartwarming tale. Then, for my second Olympic tale, well, my second and final, but there's a lot to unpack in this one. 1904.
Good year.
Maybe, I don't know. But it was the first ever Olympics in the United States, and it was held at St. Louis, Missouri. Well, specifically, I want to talk about the marathon, which was just... Basically, you know how today the marathon, like, if you think about any marathons, like London Marathon or Olympic event marathons and stuff, they're, like, well choreographed, peak
Like
human
the routes
endurance.
planned.
The routes planned, but, like, as well as that, like, the athletes have even trained for the route, you know, like, to do with, like, elevation and stuff like that. Like, remember when the Kenyan man set the fastest, I can't remember his name now, which is bad, but, you know, he set the sub 2 hour marathon time, and the level of detail that went into planning that was, like, they literally had, like, you know, they literally made sure that, like, the wind was right. They practiced, they chose one where, like, the camber angles of the road wasn't too much and stuff like that. Like, none of that was the case back in 1904 is what I want to say.
Oh, shocking.
It couldn't have been worse. So at this one, a couple of the runners either had raced in previous Olympic marathons or the Boston Marathon, but the majority of the field was made up of just random, basically amateurs who wanted to go running. There were 10 Greeks involved who had never ran a marathon in their life. They just, I presume they just qualified because they just said they were from Marathon and they were like, that's enough. There were 2 men of the Tswana tribe of South Africa who were there as part of, there was also the World Fair going on in St. Louis at the same time, so they were just there as part of that. And just decided to go for the run. And they decided to run barefoot, unlike everybody else. There was a man called Felix Carbajal from Cuba who raised money by running up and down Cuba, like literally up and down the entire length of Cuba. But then when he arrived in America, he lost all his money on a dice game and had to hitchhike to St. Louis.
Watch hitchhike during the race. That's surely cheating.
Wait, we'll get to that.
Oh, right, okay.
That could be classed as foreshadowing.
All right, okay.
Because he'd lost all his stuff, all his money, he didn't have any shorts. He was just wearing trousers. But one of his competitors lent him a pair of scissors so he could cut the bottoms off and turn them into shorts. The temperature was over 90 degrees Fahrenheit, so that's about 30 degrees Celsius.
Okay, so that's warm.
So it's warm. It involved 7 hills along the 26-mile course. You know, usually marathons are done fairly flat places, but nope, 7 hills on this one. They didn't stop any traffic. They didn't stop traffic, didn't stop trams, you know, the streetcar things, whatever they're called.
Yeah.
Or even the trains, because they had to cross some train lines at some point. So, and, you know, mentioned how hot it was and all that. There were only 2 places to get water, like, throughout the entire course.
One of which was a well.
Yeah, no, literally. One of them was a roadside well.
Oh, fuck, I was joking.
No.
This isn't foreshadowing anymore. This is just me thinking of the worst case scenario.
Well, apparently the organizer wanted to limit the amount of fluids because he wanted to see the effects of dehydration, because of a common area of research at the time.
Good time to sort of indulge in a bit of amateur science.
Yeah. Apparently they did have coaches and doctors on hand in cars to sort of, you know, go along with the runners. But the problem was, because this was before roads were paved and stuff, all they did was, like, kick up loads of dust and make things even harder. One guy collapsed within a few miles because the dust had coated his esophagus and ripped the stomach lining, so he started bleeding internally.
Fuck.
He survived after going to hospital. Another gave up after having to vomit. One of the aforementioned South Africans was chased by wild dogs. The Cuban guy stopped to have a chat with spectators. Then he, at one point, he saw people eating some peaches, asked for one. They said no, so he took two and just ran off with them. then he found
frayed shorts.
It gets even worse. Then he, apparently he's also wearing like normal shoes as well, like just
like leather shoes.
Yeah. Then he apparently really loved fruit because later on in the course he stopped at an orchard, found some apples. They turned out to be rotten. He got stomach cramps and had to take a nap.
Nap, not quit the race. Yeah. Just a quick 40-minute snooze.
Yeah. At 9 miles, one guy decided to hitch a ride. Told you it was foreshadowing. Waving at spectators and fellow runners as he passed. Bear in mind,
what is this wacky races?
Bear in mind,
someone set up Acme traps.
All of this has happened before the 10-mile mark.
We're not even
halfway around the course yet. There's already been like 2 near fatalities.
Can I guess what was going to happen? So someone ran ahead to where there was a tunnel and then painted a fake tunnel entrance and everyone ran into the mountain. Someone fucking put a stick of dynamite in someone's shorts. Someone tied an anvil to someone's trainers.
None of this would be particularly out of...
No.
Off the mark. At the 10-mile mark, one guy was desperately dehydrated, asked the support crew if he could have a drink, but they refused and gave him some, just put a wet sponge in his mouth, and that was it. With 7 miles to go, his support team gave him a concoction of egg whites and strychnine, which is the first recorded instance of drug use in the modern Olympics. Because at the time there were no rules about it. So he just basically gave him a stimulant. They also had on-hand brandy, just in case. I don't know what that would actually help.
You know when you wake up in the middle of the night and you're just absolutely gasping, you're just so dehydrated. The first thing you reach for is brandy.
Yeah, it's not the best.
Oh, it quenches.
The guy who was hitchhiking he decided to run the last few miles.
Oh, that's good of him.
Yeah, then the crowd started chanting because they obviously didn't know he'd hitchhiked, and he just went around with it and accepted the gold medal. Because they did it literally there and then. Way to the crowd, got given the gold medal, and then other people pointed out that he cheated and stuff, and so then he started getting booed. And then he tried to say that he only did it as a joke. The guy who took the strychnine, he was basically on his arse, and they decided to give him the brandy, and then he managed to keep running. So he was able to run very well, but his eyes were dull, lustreless, and the ashen colour of his face and skin had deepened. He began hallucinating and believing the finish line was still 20 miles away. In the last mile, he begged for something to eat, then he begged to lie down. He was given some more brandy and some more egg whites. His trainers, in the end, carried him over the line, and he was declared the winner after the first guy had been disqualified.
He's the winner.
He lost 8 pounds during the race.
Yeah, not surprised. That'll be the strychnine.
That was it, basically.
Madness. Utter madness.
Mm-hmm.
And yet more entertaining than a professionally and efficiently run marathon.
Obviously, because otherwise it's just people running. Nobody's got time for that. Wacky races is what we want.
Someone at work was telling me that they'd gone out for a run after work on Thursday, completely forgetting that at 8 p.m. in this country on Thursdays, we've started doing this clap for the NHS workers, and was on his way home to find his street applauding. and they thought he said it was like finishing a marathon in the first place. So he puts his hands over his head and runs down the street cheering.
Awkward when you realise this. Right, I think we've crossed the finish line. Over to you for your first topic.
Okay, so for my first topic, I'm going to talk about place names. Chris, what's the best named place you've ever been to? Either a town, a city, a funny named pub?
Well, it's not necessarily the name itself, but there's a place in England called Shilbottle. But when I was driving past, somebody had gone with a marker pen and put a line through the L, so they said shit bottle. But they'd done that on every single sign over about 2 mile, like, you know, and the thing is as well, is it's like, it's a dual carriageway. There was no pavement. Somebody had gone out of their way to walk along the verge and just with a marker pen, just change it to shit bottle.
Or better yet, drive for a minute and a half, get out.
Yeah, stop.
Yep.
Yeah. And they did it for about a 2 mile stretch, just every sign.
And I bet it got funnier and funnier with every progressive shit bottle.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's actually near a place, which is a funny name, a place called Sex How.
Sex How?
It's just like, yeah, it just always makes me think like it should have like a...
question mark after it?
Yeah, I was going to say an interrobang.
Oh, right, nice.
Question mark and an exclamation mark.
Sex How?
Sex How? Yeah. Why do you ask?
Well, because this week I learned about US place names. Now, obviously, it's nothing new that whenever, like, a country invades another country, it tends to name new places after places back home. So obviously, when we, as in the British, went to Australia, you get New South Wales and stuff like that. And with the US being such a young country then, and with so many powers, and so many like, different empires taking it over from the Native Americans, then, you know, some of them are really obvious. So, like, there's loads of UK cities that have their names in America. So Manchester, New Hampshire, Birmingham, Alabama, etc. You know, they're really obvious. You know, you got Scandinavian places in Minnesota, sort of Irish names in New England, that sort of thing. So, you know, wherever people have gone, they've always named it after the places they've come from. Some are slightly less obvious. So there's a Moscow in Texas, there's a Tripoli in Pennsylvania, and a Baghdad in Arizona.
To be fair, Arizona is also a desert, so, you know, actually does seem quite fitting.
You know what this reminds me of? Baghdad. Yeah, now that you see it. Yeah, all right.
I can see it.
Yeah. But there's also loads of places that have ancient names. It's a bit mundane to come from London and to move somewhere else across the sea and then call it London. These guys are thinking a bit more sort of grandiose, sort of trying to impart a bit of classical grandeur on their new town or whatever. So there's a Bethlehem in Pennsylvania, a Babylon in New York, Antioch, where they make the holy hand grenades, in California. There's a Nazareth, there's an Argos, a Corinth, a Damascus, a Delphi, a Jericho, Jerusalem, a Sparta in Georgia, which I quite like, and a Thebes in Illinois.
Memphis, Tennessee.
Yeah, I would argue that Memphis, Tennessee is now more famous than the ancient Memphis.
Yes, I would agree. Thank you, Elvis.
Wherever you are.
Hopefully listening to this podcast.
Hey, thanks for the shout out, fellas. So there's 30 different Parises across the US, 10 different Londons, 3 Jerusalems. But some places just give up on the names and go, you know what, fuck it, we're going to get weird. So there's a town called Rough and Ready in California, Two Eggs, Florida, Climax, Georgia, Bug Tussle, Kentucky, my favourite Burnt Porcupine in Maine, Love Ladies, New Jersey, Mud Butt, South Dakota, another strong one, Ding Dong, Texas, Mexican Hat, Utah.
Why can't they call it sombrero?
Yeah, that's a good point.
They couldn't even be bothered, millennials. So it's just a Mexican hat.
Mexican hat. There's Satan's Kingdom in Vermont, which for such a sort of Christian country does seem like...
Yeah.
I don't know. There's Hump Tulips, Washington, Lick Fork, West Virginia, and Chugwater, Wyoming. Which I think they're all better names than just picking somewhere where you're from.
Oh yeah, it's not very imaginative, is it?
If we were going to found a town...
What would I call it? I've thought about this before. I'd call it Christopia.
Yeah, I know, but if you weren't so vain and hubristic as to name it after yourself...
Oh, I don't know. Isn't it weird? Because, like, you know, like English play. I imagine other countries probably have similar things. Like a lot of our towns do literally just mean like they're very like descriptive and unimaginative. But like they don't sound that way now because English has moved on. But like in Old English, like you know, like anywhere with like Ford in the name literally just means it's a ford on the river.
Yeah.
Or like anything with Hampton in it, or even Ham, just means like town.
Yeah.
So it's just like, yeah, it's a lot of places are literally just called like Hilltown or something, if you know what they're actually. It's like, we made the town on the hill, what do we call it?
Hilltown. Do you want to call it Mexican Hat? No, that's silly.
No.
We'll call it Hilltown because it's a...
Yeah.
What about sombrero? Where the hell have you learned Spanish?
Well, what do you call the town then?
I want to go wacky with it, like Ding Dong, Texas. I wouldn't call it Ding Dong, Texas, but I'd rather have something in that vein, so maybe call it, I don't know, Chicken Prolapse, Lancashire. I don't know.
Nice.
I don't know where in Lancashire I'm going to get to found a new town. I think we've pretty much sort of sorted out where the towns are, but maybe...
But you never know. Or maybe... Well, we're going to have to go through all this again when they start, like, colonising planets.
Oh, yeah, that's true, yeah. That would be a good job,
Right.
is just naming naming new settlements.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
no one can stop you.
No, I mean... So, obviously, if the virus gets any worse, then all the rich and powerful people are going to move to Mars, apparently. So, obviously... As the voices behind such an august podcast as this, we're obviously getting on that spaceship.
Obviously.
Maybe, other than being the keepers of the truth, maybe we could be town namers.
Town namers, but not planners.
No.
We shouldn't be trusted with traffic management.
No, because we'll just set up a series of wacky races. That constant struggle, you trying to, you being like, okay, we'll call this it. We've got Christopia, Chrisville, Chris Cincinnati, Chrisington. And I'm saying, no, let's call it Goose's Nipples. And you're like, no.
Oh, that's a good name.
Is it? It sounds like I've said the words Goose Nipples.
Yeah, but people, it's sticking in the mind.
Yeah, and maybe it'll grow into it. The first generation will be embarrassed by Goose Nipples, but then sort of 300 years' time, you'd be like, I'm a proud Goose Nippletonian. What the people be? Nippolites.
Nippolites, yeah, I think so.
Nippolites. I'm sorry, Desmond, to bring you into this.
Oh, just going back to the whole Mars thing, did you see, Elon Musk does actually want everyone to go to... Well, not everyone. He wants to go to Mars.
Or just him and Grimes?
Well, no, that's the thing, is he said, Mars should be for everyone. And then someone was like, what about people who can't afford it? And he was like, well, we could give them loans and then they can work it off when we get there because we'll need lots of labourers. It's like, slavery. You've invented slavery. Oh yeah, well, you'll just be in indentured servitude for life and probably your next generation because I imagine, unless the day rates are significantly higher once you get to Mars, I imagine you're not going to be able to pay off the billion, dollar costs of a rocket trip to Mars.
I mean, how dispiriting is that? It's bad enough when you're a student, but then, you go to the Mars ATM or Matum, it says available balance -1 billion, and you're just like, fuck, that's so many zeros. Maybe we shouldn't go to Mars and reinvent slavery.
I feel like there must be better ways.
If there's anything that doesn't need a 21st century reboot.
Yeah. Well, we've got plagues, so, what should the next old-timey horrific thing be?
Let my people go to Mars. I suppose they're all Red Seas up there.
I was just about to say that. I thought we thought the same thing. Oh, man. I was like, I won't say it.
That'd be stupid.
I'll say it.
So that's the difference. You think of a shit joke and think, nah, I probably wouldn't say it. And I was dead happy about that. I was like, I'm gonna fucking say it.
Oh, man.
And on that note, I think I'll throw it over to you for your second topic.
Okay, so for my second topic, I'd like to just ask you a question. What ways do you think there are of uniquely identifying someone?
Yeah, so the obvious ones would be what's their favourite flavour of Walker's crisps?
Alright, I was hoping you were gonna, set me up for my topic, but never mind. Because the obvious ways would be say fingerprints and DNA.
Do you think I would do that?
I don't know, just the unspoken co-host bond that says when doing improv, don't say no.
Why would I do that when I... Not only do I say it's less yes and more no, but
it's just like doing one of those improv things where it's like, all right, so you're gonna have a house party, ding dong. Just go pretend I'm not in. For fuck's sake, there's no party here. Anyway, so had you said, okay, fingerprints, I would have said,
that's a good one.
Yeah, I would have said, well, did you know that your butthole is also unique? And then you would have been shocked and Well, yes, and everyone's else. We can just imagine the listeners would have been like, oh, wow, set up, joke. But
wow, what synergy between these two lifelong friends.
Yeah. So, how do you know this, Chris? I hear Chris asks me.
Oh, yeah. What? That's amazing.
So, scientists at Stanford University have developed a smart toilet. So, we have smartwatches, smartphones, and now we have smart toilets. And the idea is, if you wanted somebody to creepily find out how healthy you were in the worst possible way, this toilet will do that for you. So it will analyse your excretions, and look out for, like, any disease markers, like certain proteins or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's things of disease. But toilets are obviously used by multiple people. Most of us aren't fortunate enough to just have our own personal loo. So it has to know which users on it, so they know, like, whose health, to add these statistics to or whatever. And by doing that, it's got a camera, because this idea couldn't get any worse. It has a camera which takes a picture of your butthole and matches it to its database and determines who the user is.
And they couldn't have had, like, I don't know, a thumbprint scanner.
No. Apparently not.
Or
what's
like
your favourite packet of crisps
passcode.
question.
Oh, someone's been having the prawn cocktail.
Yeah.
Are you going at the prospect of prawn cocktail or at the...
No, just at the idea that your
toilet
could taste it.
Yeah, particularly if it's got a mouth of its own and it's going...
So why would you give this machine sentience?
Of all the things.
Yeah. Oh, apparently it does actually also have a fingerprint reader on the flush. So apparently the camera, the anus camera, is just for shits and giggles. Hey, shits and giggles, I didn't even mean that.
Not so many giggles, just shits.
And apparently it sends this data to the cloud, because what the cloud needs is pictures of your butthole. Like, after all these things of people being hacked and stuff, just like, imagine if the internet managed to get hold of some celebrities, like, butthole photos, and then also their, like, health data.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the health data is the worrying side of it, but in a lineup of 10, do you think you could recognise your butthole?
No. I mean, it's one of those things you don't really see, do you?
Would you be particularly worried if a picture of, particularly if the camera's looking up, it's going to be quite dark.
Oh, yeah, but, like, how do you know when it starts taking the photos? What if it takes photos, like, as you're standing up or sitting down or something? It might get a photo of a wide-angle shot, say. The best thing is the press release from Stanford University ends with, to fully reap the benefits of the smart toilet, users must make their peace with a camera that scans their anus. Which is just like... I don't know, it's not exactly like one of the Buddha's sayings, is it? Like, make peace with the camera that scans your anus.
I think it means to live in the present. No, it's literal. Don't let a camera...
No, do let a camera.
Oh, do let a camera, but don't let companies sell the data.
Mm.
Companies always want to have, like, a social element involved, so there'll be, like, a share button that shares both the picture and the results with your Facebook feed. It's like the share button on porn sites.
Yeah, like, who needs that? Especially because most of the sites it links to would, like, Twitter's the Wild West. I do quite like Twitter because of that. Like, I'm not a social media fan, even though I am our social media manager, but I do quite like the fact that Twitter is basically just like, fucking no rules. Do what you want. But yeah, apart from that, like, if you were to share any of those on Facebook, you'd just instant ban. So why is there a button for it? Who came up with that? I'm pretty sure you can share it to LinkedIn as well. Like, that'd be the potential employers.
So what do you think your biggest weakness for this job would be? Probably for publicly sharing my piss fetish porn. Yeah, that's one of the big ones. Again, to quote the Buddha. The camera seems to be the one thing that jeopardizes this whole venture.
Yes. Like, it could just have a thumbprint scanner, and that would be the end of it. But they seem to really want this whole... I don't know, I feel like somebody must have been looking at a lot of pictures of butts and was like, hang on a second, I can tell the difference between these buttholes. And then went back to the research.
That one just winked at me.
Yeah, how can I use this for science?
You know the Japanese toilets that like talk to you and have got like hair, not hair dryers, but like a hot air.
Yeah.
Like, do you think it? Yeah. Do you think it'd thank you?
I hope not.
Like
again, why would it get this sentience?
Well, it's not sentience. It's just sensors.
Yeah, no.
Does it have good bedside manner? If you can switch it to like doctor mode, and it says like, you might need to watch your fibre intake.
Yeah.
Also, thank you for shitting in my mouth.
Yeah, I just hope not. I feel like I don't want my toilet to talk to me ever under any circumstances. Maybe play a jingle.
What kind of jingle do you want?
Like elevator music. Like,
right,
a bit like
music.
Jazz, like Girl from Ipanema or something.
Shit in my mouth.
I think we have the episode title anyway. We're really pushing iTunes like how much you can get away with.
We might attract the wrong audience. But
an audience nonetheless. And so, on that note...
That brown note.
Indeed. Well played. Over to you to round us off.
To squeeze it out. So, Chris, as the aforementioned reluctant social media manager side of our partnership, you must be familiar with the concept of public shaming.
Yes.
Like, sort of shaming, not necessarily that it's happened to you, but you're aware of it.
No, I like to partake in it on a regular basis. I scroll through people's timelines to find something from 2007 they said that was slightly racist.
Look, I'm sorry, we'd all had a drink. But to be fair, you do look a lot like Obama.
I'll take that. I once got pulled aside at a bar by two random guys who were like off their face. Like, I'm pretty sure they were on drugs, not just drunk. Who I couldn't tell. They were both mixed race. And I couldn't tell if they thought I was Obama, they thought I knew Obama, or they just thought I looked like Obama. They seemed to be changing as we're talking. Like, sometimes they seem to be addressing me as Obama. And I was just like, no, like, you need to do more to help mixed race people. And I was like, I'll bring it up at the next meeting.
I love the genericism of meeting.
Yeah. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't just say no.
I know that I, Obama, am using my scant free time to spend in a shitty bar in Manchester. But next time I fly back to DC, I'll bring it up at the meeting. Guys, had some feedback from a couple of lovely lads in a bar in Manchester. Turns out we could be doing more,
More for race relations.
Yeah. Well, okay, so, this sort of public shaming is clearly nothing new, as long as there have been people, particularly living in a systematically dominant society that, favours certain people. There's always going to be public shaming. I think just, social media's just amplified it. But this is a story about the people who tried to publicly shame Julius Caesar.
Good luck.
So in the Senate, Suetonius called him the husband to all wives and wife to all husbands because, he got around with the fellas, shall we say. Mm-hmm. And Cicero, classic Cicero, used to go around the Senate making jokes about Caesars who for submitting to King Nicomedes of Bithynia as a young man, describing their tryst as, and I apologise for this language, a golden couch arranged in purple where the virginity of the one sprung from Venus was lost in Bithynia. There's a reason we have explicit warning on our podcasts.
I thought you were going to say, I apologise for the language, and then you were going to quote it in Latin.
If you wait 2 more paragraphs...
Foreshadowing.
So it is true that Caesar spent time with King Nicomedes. Basically, he was sent there to try and secure a fleet, and then ended up spending quite a lot more time at the palace than it was probably necessary to say, hey mate, can we borrow some ships? And rumours were abound that there was and if you'll excuse my Latin, and the, foreshadowed joke, a bit of prostrate regi pudicitiae going on, if you know what I mean. And another fella in the Senate during the indictments of Caesar called him the Queen of Bithynia. And obviously it's both by modern standards, homophobic and misogynistic to sort of compare him to a woman and therefore as something less, you know what I mean?
Like, the Romans had a weird thing with homosexual relations in that they were perfectly okay with them, but if you were, like, the bottom, that's when they sort of, like, that's what all the insults were about. They were all about how he was the, you know, the wife or whatever.
Yeah, he was bottoming to Nicomedes.
They'd have no problems with it if he was the one. Like, it was a weird sort of... There was a stigma, but only for 50% of the participants, and the other 50% it was like perfectly fine. Do you know what I mean?
It's the submission rather than the act.
Yeah, exactly. Despite what like random alt-right people will try and tell you about ancient Rome being, well, whatever weird fantasy they have, they weren't like homophobic in the like modern sense of the word.
In the way that the alt-right want them to be.
Yeah, exactly. They were just sort of like, they were perfectly fine with it, but it was just seen as a lesser thing.
Yeah, you just had to sort of be a man about it.
Yeah.
Like, for want of a better phrase.
Yeah.
These rumours were so well known that there was a military marching song called Urbani, meaning citizens, that made jokes at Caesar's expense. One verse goes, Nicomedes non triumphat qui subagit Caesarem, or Nicomedes does not triumph, but he vanquished, meaning bummed, Caesar. Which I suppose is like the Roman equivalent of
a football chant.
Caesar takes it up the arse, up the arse, up the arse. That sort of thing.
Something like that.
Your point about it's not the act that was frowned upon, it was the submission that was thing. That's, I thought, the part that was interesting, that it's not like slut-shaming of today, which seems to, as if as a society we want to, not want to, but if as a society we commodify women and then shame them for providing that commodity, if you know what I mean.
Oh,
like
yeah.
The irony
it's mad. Like, yeah, no, exactly what you're saying. It's like, it's why, like, the whole sex scandal thing, you know, like, whenever there's a sex tape leak or whatever, and everyone's always sort of scandalised to find out, you know, that whoever is, like, having sex, I suppose. And it's always like, but then they're always expected to wear bikinis or whatever on stage. And then everyone acts surprised when it turns out that, yes, this attractive young person is getting laid with, like what would, I don't know what everyone expects. It's this weird thing about it. We have a weird hang-up about it, where we're all obsessed with it, but also all like, hate it.
Yeah, it's like the expectation of, like, sort of public sort of sluttiness, for want of a better word, for like, the audience's consumption, but then demanding private sort of chastity.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's, not to get on my soapbox, but I feel like a lot of society's problems seem to stem around contradictory wants, and like sex being one of them. Is like, we're obsessed with it as a culture, like, it's everywhere, but we also hate the fact that if anyone's ever like found having it, you know, like the whole thing where Facebook, like, you know, the whole free the nipple thing, because like a woman's boobs get censored immediately on Facebook, but you could have somebody literally, like, real life being murdered, and that video is allowed to stay up on Facebook if they deem it like newsworthy. Yeah. But if any of the participants were a topless woman, then all of a sudden it becomes taboo. And yet there's, like, Instagram is basically like powered by models. You know, like, that's where most of the money sort of comes from, as Instagram models and influencers who are usually like scantily clad. But if any of them were to show a nipple, they'd be instantly like kicked off the platform. And it's like such a weird line to like.
Yeah, it's like we want to imagine your nipples, but if you actually show them, then that's, you know, think of the children.
Yeah, it's weird.
Do you not find America in particular is that, like you say, it's that obsession with both violence and sex, but like sort of glorifying violence and demonizing sex. It's such a weird, like, I suppose, like you say, you know, beheadings is fine unless you can see a nipple.
Yeah, it's really odd. I remember once watching I was on holiday in America, and they were so obsessed with censoring nipples, they drew attention to them. Like, it was censoring, you know, when they do like the blurry censor, like not the like black bar, but like the sort of fuzzy thing. They're doing that on... Basically, there were women not wearing bras on the... whatever it was. It might have even been Friends or something like that. You could see, like, the outline of it. Or you would have been able to see. And you probably would have barely registered, because most people can handle that level of stimulation without it being a big deal. But they felt the need to put these blurry sensors on them, drawing your eyes towards them. It's just like, come on, guys. It's the vague outline of a nipple. We'll survive.
Yeah, it's a weird double standard. But yeah, so I guess it's as much as we think of slut shaming in particular as a modern phenomenon spurred by social media. It's been around as long as there's been humans, including the Romans.
I feel like the Romans probably had their fair share of weird hang-ups about it as well.
Yeah, it's just different tastes for different ages.
Is this the toilet talking again? Thank you.
Cheese and onion.
Ooh.
Thank you. I need to... We'll keep going. And that brings us to the end of episode 43 of Cooking with Grief. We hope you've enjoyed it. This episode was brought to you by ham. It's like gammon, but thinner. Use the code GRIEF for 10% off your next order of ham. So that's it. Another one for the awards folder. I've been Chris.
I've been a different Chris.
And we hope you're doing all right. Staying safe, staying sane, staying indoors, staying together.
The light. Staying glass windows.
Thank you for listening. You can follow us on Twitter. That's at Cooking with Grief with no G. On cooking, email us at cookingwithgrief@gmail.com. Yeah, I think that's it. Another slam dunk, another home run, another
goal.
Points, sports points.
Yes, indeed.
So until next time, we'll just say thank you for listening and goodbye.
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 Bye.
Yeah, see you, bye.
Bye.
Okay, we need to stop this.
Bye.
Okay, but bye though.
Thank you.
Ooh, Monster Munch. Bye.